invited my sister a popcorn to her, my sister Mary Stewart, who lives near Sebastopol in California.
Yeah, Sonoma County here, California. And I'm a retired public defender. Um, 21 years uh, of all that. And now I'm at the YWCA facilitating support groups for domestic abuse.
Wow. Wow.
That's awesome.
One side to the other. Dependents to victims. I have to get my karma balanced.
What happened to Mercury's
Has anyone not spoken? I mean, I know there's people.
Yeah.
Kiki, do you want to talk? Oh, wait, go ahead.
I don't know. Kiki, we haven't heard from Kiki, so yeah.
Oh, sorry, is it connected?
There.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, my internet's not great today. But I'm Kiki. I met Allie when we were kids and then met the lovely Levels through her. And I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. And I don't know who hasn't spoken yet. So
Let's see, Lila.
wait, you're
I
muted.
keep hitting the video and trying to hit unmute and then I miss it. So I'm on my phone for the Zoom and my computer for work. I'm Lila. I met Kate in law school and I am from Baton Rouge, Louisiana and am now in New Orleans, Louisiana. So I am doing, the opposite of Kate, being the bad person. And I am a maritime defense attorney. So, but I hang out with Kate to balance my karma.
Let's see. Did we hear from Mary? Yes. Allie and Ben? Are you guys still on? You don't have to show yourselves, just say where you are. Did they already get off? No, they're still there. Well, anyway, Allie and Ben are in Bristol, England, and it's 10 o'clock there, so they're in bed. Okay, I think we have everybody, right? So Kate is amazing. I've known her for a long time. She's one of my favorite people. And she's doing stories from court, why she's an abolitionist and a public defender. And yeah, I'm so excited. Thank you for presenting.
Thank you. Really quickly, apparently Allie is not in the meeting anymore, and she's asking me to let her in, but I don't know how to do that.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry. Okay. What happened to her?
I don't
Mom,
know.
can you make me and Amy co-hosts on this so we can help with the behind the scenes stuff?
Okay, how do I do that?
Go to the three dots by me or Amy's name or their photo, and then you should be able to say make co-host.
Okay. See co-host.
I'm sorry that I got kicked out. I was trying to unmute and I don't know what I did.
There was an IT crisis.
And my phone it froze and then the meeting disappeared.
Make host.
No, co-host. She wants to do co-host.
Oh, well.
Where's Juliet?
It's in co-host. Make host.
Is it make host?
Just make me the host and I can do it.
Yeah, make her the host.
Okay, where is she?
Oh,
Juliet, where are you? I can't see you. Okay.
I had my camera off. Sorry guys. Usually I'm in charge of the technical stuff, but since I'm on my phone, we're working with what we have.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Okay, last thing. Somebody has to let me share my screen.
Yep, working on it.
Thank God Juliet took over. And thank God her flight was delayed, because I would be I need to take a class.
That would be a great next
yeah
discussion.
Yes.
Okay.
Now let's see if I can make this present. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so my name is Kate. Sort of already did a little introduction, but this is my presentation, why I'm an abolitionist and a public defender. So this is kind of my outline. Just going to talk a little bit about like a historical background, then like how I get clients. And the process for me of beginning my representation of somebody, some like procedural points, and then I was going to talk about sex offenses. So that's when it's going to get a little upsetting. Also, I want to say, first of all, my computer has already begun huffing and puffing. It's very old, and I've just gotten a work computer. So for the past 6 months or so, I have been using my 2015 laptop as my work computer, and it's really getting run into the ground. Other side note, sorry if I start hacking in the middle of it, I'm like getting over a little bit of a cold. And third side note, I know that the flyer included kind of like a trigger warning, but I do want to say that the sex offenses part will probably be upsetting to some people. I'm like not going to tell my worst stories because they're really disturbing, but just we are definitely going to be talking about like the sex offender registry and what that means. And kind of as a public defender, I have a very probably lewd sense of humor, and I definitely swear a lot, but I'm going to try not to do that. But apologies up front if I do. So first of all, like getting into some historical background, we're all familiar with, or if not, I'll describe the Netflix documentary 13. So the reason that we have prisons to begin with is a loophole to get out of the 13th Amendment outlawing slavery, because that is the reason that prisons were created, was to kind of handle the economic issue that was going to be caused by abolition. So I've included here a picture. This is actually about 10 years old, I think, from Angola prison in Louisiana. So I live in Louisiana now. I'm from South Carolina. My mom actually was a public defender for probably about 5 years, and then she quit practicing to raise us kids. So that was sort of my impetus for wanting to be a public defender. But then also now I live in Louisiana, which is the most incarcerated place in the country, and because of that, also the world. So Angola prison is the largest prison in Louisiana. It's called Angola because it's a former slave plantation, and the slave plantation was named Angola because apparently that is where a lot of the enslaved people were from. So it's not formally called Angola, it's formerly called Louisiana State Penitentiary, but people call it Angola. Additionally, it still pretty much operates as a plantation. You can see here we have incarcerated people working in the fields. This image is taken from an AP News article that I linked at the very end that discusses how all of our produce and food, for the most part, passes through an incarcerated person's hands at some point. So at Angola, they do a lot of field work, and I'm not sure exactly how much these inmates get paid, but across the board in Louisiana, I think the average pay is about 5 cents an hour. So that's actually part of the reason I wanted to do this talk, and I realize I'm quite jumbled in my thoughts, but it's just a lot of things I want to say. I feel like pretty much every day as a public defender, I learned something that I think would shock the conscience of most people. And so I kind of wanted to share some of those things because I think they're important to talk about. So for instance, the 5 cents thing is a really big one for me. especially because while you're incarcerated, you still have to pay for things like, I think, toothpaste, any kind of snacks you want, anything that is not already provided to you by the prison, which is very few things. And those are pretty much like the prices that we would see. So for the most part, people get money put on their commissary by like family members, otherwise they don't get to buy anything. So this is my second picture from Angola. One other thing they're really famous for is that they have a rodeo. And so this is just an image from the rodeo. It's really kind of insane to talk about because, of course, that's really unsafe and definitely people get hurt every year. I do have a lot of mixed feelings about it, but I do really want to go to the rodeo. I feel like if I were incarcerated, I would probably want to be in the rodeo because it would be something to do. A lot of people also sell stuff they make at this rodeo. I've been to their like arts and crafts fair. I think that's a lot of how people are able to make money for like their commissary and stuff, because for the most part, people who are at Angola are serving pretty long sentences. Otherwise, they'd probably be kept in like a, parish jail. And also because we're in Louisiana, we have parishes and not counties. That's why I'm saying that. Oh, that skipped to the sex offenses part. Okay, so I don't have any images for this next portion of the presentation, so I'm just going to stop sharing for a minute. Oh.
Can I interrupt a moment? Could you speak a little more loudly?
Yes, sorry.
Having put our heads next to the laptop to hear you. Okay, that's all. Take me off.
Is this better? I think that's about as loud as I can make myself. I'm like, because I'm having my like stuffed up stuff, my ears are kind of clogged and I feel like I'm yelling, but I'm probably not. But yeah, just interrupt me if I'm not speaking loud enough. So I guess my next point was how I get clients. So, and just to preface all this, everything I'm going to say is about Louisiana. I only know about Louisiana. I took the Louisiana bar exam. We have like different rules kind of than like every other state. So I'm not certain how everything works everywhere else. In Louisiana, you're entitled to what's called a 72-hour hearing. So when you get arrested, you're supposed to go in front of the commissioner within 72 hours of your arrest, and you're supposed to be appointed counsel and have a bond set so that you can pay that bond and get released. My office is trying to kind of reform itself a little bit more. And at this moment, we don't have attorneys who attend the 72-hour hearings. We have a staff member who sits in on them and then sends the attorneys the information later. But we're having a real issue about volume because she's only one person. And there have been times where I have not known about a client for weeks after they've been arrested. We've also had issues with people actually attending their 72-hour hearings. One of my clients recently was in medical as a reason they won't go to 72-hour hearings, but still by law they're meant to be appointed counsel then. I have one client who was arrested in St. Tammany Parish, transported to Orleans Parish. St. Tammany Parish is where I work. Pled guilty in Orleans Parish and then was transported back to St. Tammany Parish. And then he was given a 72-hour hearing. So I had no idea about him for months. And the reason they would give for that delay would be that he's seeking medical treatment, which obviously if an incarcerated person is like ill, that's even more reason for me to know about them. And the remedy for the failure to bring somebody to a 72-hour hearing within 72 hours is meant to be release. But we will go forward on those motions and we will always lose. So that's really fun. So basically somebody goes to their 72-hour hearing. And at some point I'll learn about them and I will message them on something that's called jail ATM. So it's a way for the incarcerated people to basically send me emails. And I'll send them an email and I'll say, you know, I'm the public defender assigned to your case if you want me to come meet with you. And then I go and I meet with them in the jail. And we will talk usually about bond first and foremost, because the main goal initially is to get somebody out of jail. But sometimes people who are arrested cannot bond out of jail. I have one guy who has a hold from ICE. But most people have like a parole or probation hold. So basically when they get incarcerated, if they're on parole or probation, they can't bond out. And it opens a whole other can of worms. So those are some of the initial stages. And then once somebody is incarcerated, and they've been basically arrested by like a police officer, the district attorney's office has 60 days with which to file what's called a bill of information, which are like formalized charges that the district attorney's office wishes to pursue on behalf of that person. So it's really like 2 months that somebody will sit in jail a lot of times before it's even formally decided what they are being charged with. At that point, if the district attorney's office doesn't file a bill of information within 60 days, I will file a motion called a 701 motion for release, because they violated Article 701 of the Louisiana Code of Criminal Procedure. And then the district attorney's office will file a bill. And basically, if they file a bill before the motion is heard in court, then like it doesn't matter that they waited too long, basically. The remedy for that is supposed to be release also, but if they file a bill before the court date, then it's fixed. What is Lila saying? Yes. What was I gonna say? That's some of the procedure when I'm first assigned somebody. For whatever reason in St. Tammany Parish, we really don't go to court that often. So for example, I went to court on the 15th for arraignments. So I was arraigning the people that a bill was finally filed for. And then those people got set to go to court in May for their pretrial and trial dates. And some of those people are incarcerated, so they're just kind of sitting around a lot of times waiting to go to court. I don't really know why it's that way. I hope that it changes. Then the next point I had was just like procedural points. I kind of went over a lot of that already, but as I guess I wanted to say, as a new attorney, so I was admitted to the bar in October. I do handle felony cases, but they're all like lower level felony cases. So most of my clients just have like drug possessions and things like that. Oh, one thing that's a big deal in Louisiana is the habitual offender bill. So if you've ever been convicted of a felony before in Louisiana and you're currently facing a felony conviction, it can really enhance a sentence that you might be looking at. So there's like a cleansing period for this, but it's 5 or 10 years depending on whether or not it was a violent crime. So especially it can add up really quickly if somebody just like has a drug problem and they get caught with drugs a couple times. If somebody is looking at their 4th felony conviction in Louisiana, they're basically facing a life sentence because of how, even if, you know, the felony is like not that serious, that's just how it works. And it's really scary and it's really sad. For the most part, that's not like what ends up actually happening to people, but that pretty much means that they take like a plea of a lesser sentence. Those people don't ever want to go to trial because the stakes are so high. And then speaking of high stakes, let's talk about some sex offenses. So in St. Tammany Parish, for whatever reason, a lot of people are charged with sex offenses. And a lot of those offenses are first-degree rape, which in Louisiana pretty much always means that there was a victim under the age of 13. Which is very upsetting. And so how those cases proceed basically is like a child will go and speak to somebody at what's called a child advocacy center. And my hot take is I really hate those people. Basically, a child goes into a room with an absolute stranger. The stranger says, "Hey, we're just recording this in case I forget something," which is not true because I'm watching it. I'm watching it, the DA is watching it, a bunch of cops are watching it. It's going to be played at trial. Like, it's not, that's a lie. And then, in my opinion, what they basically proceed to do is like cross-examine a child on like something very disturbing to them. And the only goal that I see is for them to get a child to say this thing happened as many times as they can. It's not really to like make the child feel any better. It's not to, ask the child what they wish to talk about. It's really to just kind of get them to say whatever would bring the biggest punishment. So I don't like those people. And then along with sex offenses come a very long period of registration. How do I do this? Is that working? Okay, so we've all heard of the sex offender registry. Another thing that I'm going to say that I don't think a lot of people are going to initially agree with is that I hate the sex offender registry, and I think it is just a tool to keep people poor. So in Louisiana, if you're convicted of a sex offense, once you get out, you have to register. You have to register with the parish that you live in, you have to register in the parish that you work in, and you have to register in the parish you go to school in. And those might all be different parishes. And here's a list of things that you would need to provide at the time you register. Some of it's pretty obvious, like names, physical address, telephone numbers, but then it gets more specific and things I don't think most people know of, like you have to give your license plate number. You have to give them all of your email addresses or online screen names. You have to give them your IP address. If you're going on vacation for more than 7 days, you have to tell them where you're going to be. Then there's a whole other section for if you're going to go on a vacation abroad. I can't read this whole thing. Also, if you're going to have a social media, the only way you can have one as a sex offender in Louisiana is you have to have written on there that you are a sex offender, what the crime is that you were convicted of, where you were convicted, what you look like, and your address, which is pretty insane. In addition, the court can order that you are identifiable by signs, handbills, bumper stickers, or labeled clothing. Actually, in St. Tammany Parish this past Halloween, they made people who are sex offenders put up signs in their yard that say, "I am a sex offender."
Wow.
And of course, Oh, additionally, if you're homeless, as many people who've been incarcerated for long periods of time are, you have to register every 14 days in person. So you can see how people like really rack up these convictions, and the punishment for the first time is 2 to 10 years without the benefit of parole, probation, or suspension of sentence. Second conviction, 5 to 20. So that's a really long time. And of course, all of these registrations are expensive. I think it's $60 annually. But then a lot of people have to register twice a year or quarterly. And part of the registration includes like notifying everybody within a 1 mile radius of you, which you have to pay for like those cards to be printed out. And then of course also being a sex offender affects your housing and what jobs you might work. I have one client who is being charged with not failure to register, but failure to comply with the conditions of supervised release, because there is one probation officer, or I guess he does parole and probation. I guess this is more sort of being on parole, who decides to add additional conditions to people who are out after having served time for sex offenses. And the added condition he gave my client is that my client cannot be around children. So when my client's brother-in-law was over at his house, he got arrested, and the punishment for that is up to 10 years. So it's just really like a lose-lose at that point in Louisiana. Like, of course, any sex offense is a very bad thing. But at the same time, like, you've just been set up to fail in Louisiana. And I think that's kind of the purpose. I don't really see what else it would be. I'm trying to think of what other important points I wanted to mention.
Hey, can you give us some more examples of the kind of cases specifically? Like, I understand what you're saying, but I'm curious to know, if I may, what the sex offenses were to determine in my mind, like, well, was it, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So everybody who's committed any sex offense pretty much has to do the same stuff. Probably the lowest level sex offense is carnal knowledge, which is by definition like consensual sex between a minor and a person who's of age. They have to be at least 4 years apart, I'm pretty sure. So it could be that, it could be indecent behavior with a juvenile. Actually, there's a guy I know, one of my clients, but not for that case, who's being charged with indecent behavior with a juvenile for like basically making lewd comments to a minor, like in particular saying, well, I'm not gonna say, but it doesn't matter, but no allegation of him like touching her or anything, just kind of like saying things I wouldn't say to a child. One of my bosses was saying he had a case where a client was alleged to have gone up to like a 16-year-old girl and said, hey, want to have some good sex? And then that was the basis for the indecent behavior charge. Obviously not a thing I would say to kids, but as far as do I think it's personally should be a sex offense, I would say no. Sorry, I'm gonna keep talking to y'all while I let my dog out because he's crying. Come on. So those sections I just went over would apply to all sex offenses, but as far as how often somebody has to re-register is the only part that would change. So somebody convicted of first-degree rape is like, the provisions almost don't apply because the punishment for that is life without parole. I think one of my guys was in for molestation of a juvenile, which the punishment for that is 25 to 99 years. I think he took a plea deal that was less than that. He has to register every 4 months, I think. But other than that, all of the provisions are the same. Obscenity in Louisiana is like showing your genitals or masturbating in like a hospital or a prison. I think those are the only places where it's called obscenity. I don't know why. I don't know what it's called when you do it other places. That's not a sex crime. So you wouldn't have to register for that. I just thought of something else I was going to say to y'all.
Can I mention in California, the rules are not that different. They're pretty much the same. And yeah, there's a wide range of how bad the offenses can be. I handled misdemeanors mostly and juvenile court. And I had a case with a misdemeanor sexual battery and an alternate charge of a regular battery. So that means it's pretty minimal, but there was some sexualized contact. And it's supposed to be that the person is getting some arousal feeling from it, you know. And in my case, it was an asshole. He was drinking beer at a golf course, and the grandfather of a 9-year-old asked him and his friend to join up with them and golf and doubles or whatever. And he was doing stupid things. He had beer in his cart that he was dragging along, and he gets the kid. The kid keeps dropping golf balls. So he grabs him, touches his crotch and says, "Don't lose your balls, kid." Look, you know, like that's what the offense was. That and a little bit too close, showing him how to swing from behind, a little too close to his, yeah. So the jury didn't want to convict that. I wouldn't plead him. He gets a sex offense for life for that. He has to register. So that's how bad it can get, how watered down the sex offender register is. If I had lost that trial, he would be, and he's just a jerk. I mean, I didn't like my client. He was an asshole, which I told the jury. He's an asshole, but he's not guilty of a sex offense here, you know. So I had a juror who had been molested by a relative over a period of years, and I kept her. And the DA looked at me with surprise, but I think she helped me because she knew what a real sex offense was, you know.
Yeah.
So just that story, give you an example.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Definitely, I would say, I feel like there's a public idea of like, a lot of these people are innocent, and probably that's true. I definitely have a lot of clients who are very guilty. I don't have clients who've done sex offenses yet. I work on some of those cases, and it's just like very, it's just really difficult because for the most part, there's not going to be any evidence other than what I mentioned, like a child speaking in an interview. And there's not going to be any defense because the defense is going to be, I didn't do it. And in my jurisdiction, part of the reason I wanted to work in St. Tammany Parish, even though I live in Orleans Parish, is because it's so much more conservative in St. Tammany. People actually call it St. Slamony, because they're just really ready to convict anyone. There was a first degree rape trial I went and watched. I know we're asking for more details. I would give details, but I don't think anybody wants to hear. It's very disturbing. During voir dire, so like we were selecting a jury, the state was going over the fact that for first degree rape in Louisiana, the penalty is life without parole. And he asked one of the jurors, like, do you think that's a fair penalty? And the juror said, what about the death penalty? So that's just kind of the area I'm working in. And I think sex offenses against children are kind of an interesting area too, because everybody thinks it's bad. You know what I mean? Like a lot of like more liberal people don't think people should be incarcerated for drug crimes, you know, that kind of stuff, but really nobody thinks that way about sex offenses against children. So I think they're really uniquely difficult and interesting. I would be lying if I said, wow, you know, all my clients are like the most innocent people ever, because actually I don't know if a single one of my clients is innocent, but I don't think any of the stuff my clients are accused of doing at this point is very bad. The only person that I thought I was like, wow, you kind of seem like a bad person, actually fired me. He said he was hiring a private attorney because of my lack of knowledge of the law. So I don't have to worry about him anymore. I'm trying to think of what else I thought I was going to mention to y'all. I guess just like, even though I know most people are guilty of what they've done, even people who are, you know, accused of doing sex offenses, I just still don't think that incarceration is right. I feel like there's a lot of reasons for this, including there's one client who is not mine, but like I'm helping on his case a little bit. He's accused of molesting his like daughter-in-law, basically. And no. Yeah. No, his stepdaughter. He's accused of molesting his stepdaughter. And he has like his own biological child with this woman as well. And since his incarceration, he was explaining it to me, and I don't practice civil law, so I'm not exactly certain what happened, but his like wife tried to bring some kind of civil claim that he wasn't paying child support. But of course he's not making any money because he's incarcerated. Because actually in my jail, they don't have jobs. There are some people who will fight really hard to be what's called a trustee, who are just basically janitors. I don't know why these are like really coveted positions. I think just because you get to go around and do stuff, but they don't get to work in my jail. They basically just sit in their dorms and like argue with each other. So they don't get paid for anything. Even if you are a trustee, you don't get paid. So I feel like that in particular kind of highlights like how incarceration doesn't really fix the exact problem, because although, you know, however potentially dangerous this guy might be, he's not around that child anymore. But then he's still not there to be able to financially provide for this other child. So it's kind of like a burden that the mom has to incur because he is incarcerated. So it hasn't really fixed that problem. Also, a particularly weird kind of area of the law is like domestic abuse cases. I have a lot of those, and a lot of times it'll be that you know, a couple is in a fight or whatever, and one of them calls the police, and then it always ends up being like the wife or the girlfriend is calling me all the time asking how can I get him out of jail, because she changed her mind and she doesn't want him in jail anymore. I just don't really think the criminal justice system is equipped to handle that. And in my jurisdiction, especially, just the fact that a victim no longer wants to bring charges does not affect anything. It has kind of no outcome on it. So those are my stories. If anybody has any questions or comments.
Thanks, Catherine, for presenting. Obviously, you're in very difficult shoes to fill from many different aspects. And as you're talking, it makes me realize, like, okay, there's the law side, there's psychology, there's government, there's so many factors that go into play. To be able to judge, how to convict or how to punish or how to track. The one thing, obviously that, I guess the simplest thing that speaks to me is the sex offender registry, raising a daughter, in a neighborhood. I certainly would want to know. You know what I'm saying? If I have somebody who was a past sex offender in, within a couple miles radius of the school or whatever. So I understand what you're saying, the difficulty of a sex offender having to register and the damage that it could cause for their future employment, etc. So how would you protect the public, from a person, who, maybe one person is a one-off sex offender, but maybe that person, has that, if you will, serial, sex offender behavior in their DNA, so how do you protect the public, from that person? That's just one of the, one of the many conflicts that arise from your presentation.
And Dory, not only being a father of a daughter, but a mother of a young boy.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say it's, unfortunately, it's both sides.
Right. I realize I don't always give the necessary introduction to my opinion as this, because to me it's something I think about a lot. I think of course I would feel the same way if I had children. I think for me, the penalties and the provisions kind of show that the point is not actually public safety. I also feel like if you think about, there's no murder registry. If somebody has a manslaughter conviction, you would never know about it. There's no attempted murder registry. So it's really just kind of a unique thing. And I don't claim to think I really know what the answer is. I mean, I don't know. Especially, if you think about it, like people who are accused of having done these things, when they go off to, jails and prisons, you know, they're still around other people. Like, I feel like there's this get them out of society mindset, which I understand, but then once they're in jails and prisons, they're still around other people. And so it's kind of just like making sure if they victimize people, it's only those people, and that does happen a lot. And in fact, I'm going to say another thing that's really upsetting. There's something called the Prison Rape Elimination Act. And from what I can tell, basically the effect it has, which I'm like, the fact that there's something that we call this should really open everybody's eyes to kind of the world we're living in. As far as I can tell, the effect that this has is if two inmates are alleged to be having sex or it being non-consensual, one of them gets put in isolation. That happened to one of my clients not that long ago. She said, I mean, I don't know, she might have been, but she said she wasn't doing anything. And that's also what they do with children who are in adult jails. When we charge juveniles as adults who are like 16 or right now, you can only do it. I think if they're 17 in Louisiana, but now they're talking about changing that. In efforts to make sure that those children don't get sexually assaulted while in custody, what they'll do is they'll put them in isolation. So I guess my response is I just think there needs to be a whole restructuring of what it means to like protect society. I don't really know what I think the answer is, but I don't know that this current like removal and putting people in prisons and then just putting them on a registry really seems to be working. At least, you know, kind of as me and Mary were hinting at, for the sense of the wide range of crimes that you might be put on a sex offender registry for.
Yeah, the scale from minimal to serious, and you're all getting put on this register is a problem in California and clearly other places. We want it to be, since real, if someone's going to be on a sex offender list, say, now here's what happened in that same trial. In my opening statement, I started to talk about to the jury about this looks like just a simple, these are just misdemeanors, but the sex offender you know, the sexual battery means he's on a sexual offender registry for life. And I got shut down by the judge because the jury's not allowed to know that. I said, that's right. Probably true with you too. They aren't allowed to know sentences unless it's a death penalty case. But it seems to me the jury, after hearing the facts of a case, would be good ones to decide, should this person be on a sex offender list? I don't know. It's just a thought.
Oh, okay. I just read Lila's messages and it reminded me of something. So in Louisiana, we have a new governor. And one of the things he's doing is pushing for there to be a child abuse registry. So people will be put on a registry for doing, I'm not even sure exactly what would count as child abuse. So it seems like we're kind of opening that up rather than shutting it down. Additionally, just while I'm thinking of it, there's a bunch of bills that are going to be heard about parole eligibility as well as good time. There are plenty of people who don't get parole for whatever crime they're charged with. Like, for example, if you my like felon in possession of firearm people aren't eligible for parole, but they are eligible for good time. Good time is, from what I can tell, basically parole, so I don't understand how it works that way. but it ensures that people get out of custody a lot sooner than they would otherwise. And I think this push by Jeff Landry is really to bring about some like truth in sentencing type deals, which will just basically mean that my clients stay in jail for longer.
So what's the good time? In my state, it's 1/3 off your sentence if you're good. And so the problem with taking that away is that people will have no incentive to be good anymore in jail. So there's something behind that, a reason for it, you know.
In Louisiana, it's called good time, but it's actually automatic, so it's not like a good behavior thing. If your crime is not violent and you haven't been in trouble more than like 3 times before, then good time is at 35%. If it's a violent crime, it's 65. If you're sentenced under the habitual offender bill, you don't get any. So yeah, in Louisiana, we have good time, and then we also just have discretionary parole. So you'd go before a parole board. And I have a real problem with there being limits to parole because it in and of itself requires that a parole board would need to assess you and determine that they think you're basically like safe to be released. But there are plenty of crimes that don't offer parole at all. And several crimes are life without parole case is the penalty.
One thing hasn't been mentioned is treatment.
Mm-hmm.
It's questionable if you can fix a sex offender, I guess, but some of them can be dealt with in therapy and treatment.
Yeah, that's like not really something that they ever want to talk about in St. Tammany. Oh, okay, I see the message now. There's definitely an idea that sex offenders are a lot more likely to reoffend. I don't really know if that's true or not. Yeah. I don't know if there's evidence that the registry reduces recidivism either, though. I honestly have no idea. That's a good question. As far as treatment goes, the only time that really comes up is like people who have drug cases. There's actually one lady who I always sing her praises. Before my clients are billed is usually when I'm talking to her. She works for Volunteers of America, and she'll go and meet with my clients in the jail and talk to them about going to a treatment facility. And there's at least one guy right now who I'm gonna try to have like sentenced by the court to go to treatment. That wouldn't be his sentence for like the crime. That's the only problem, is like the treatment is never the actual punishment. I don't really think treatment should be punishment, but like if you're gonna say that somebody should go and do a program somewhere, I think that should be part of it, but it usually never is. But I'm gonna try to have this guy court ordered to go to treatment so that he will actually be able to get out of jail, because I don't think he's going to be able to otherwise. I've had her help me with a couple people who were able to get out either on bond or one guy who got released because they never billed him, and they went to treatment. The one guy is now in sober living. So she's been really helpful, and I wish more people had her spirit of like rehabilitating people, but for the most part, kind of everyone I'm dealing with hates my clients a lot and thinks that they're evil. So she's always nice to talk to.
Does anyone have any comments or questions?
Hi everybody. I'm late,
Hello.
but I'm Lipka also. And on the rehab, just to follow through was as I was thinking about that and listening. Uh, Sometimes there's this could be probably be applied across a spectrum of crimes, but I think that since sexual crimes are kind of societally condemned, there's a sense that you yourself cannot be rehabilitated. And if somebody, just kind of to commend people who do think that even 1% chance of some progress is something valid for working for, it gives any individual who's finds themselves in that situation to work on themselves. And at that point, that's about all you got. I mean, I feel that's somebody who's I have a I'm this is so completely foreign to things that I deal with in my normal life that uh, I have no perspective. My framework is completely invalid, and I don't even reflect deeply on it very often. But uh, as far as rehabilitation goes, is it a loss? Is it assumed to be a lost cause?
I think in Louisiana, that is kind of the assumption. Um, there's really, at least in my jurisdiction, there's really no talk. I think I would probably get laughed out of the courtroom if I brought it up. Um,
Well,
and I mean, I know, I know this talk has been a real bummer to everybody, and I'm sorry about that. But I feel like what's not been conveyed is that to do this job, I am an incredibly hopeful person, and I think that you have to be hopeful.
yeah.
And I think, like, why should we do anything if we assume all these people are evil? Why keep living even? I want to hope that even that anybody can get better. I know plenty of people talk to me all day about how they want to get treatment and then they bond out of jail and they don't go. And then they get in trouble for drugs again. Um, I have this lady that I feel like I pulled a miracle. She is this lady who, oh my goodness, sorry, my dog was falling off the couch, who has stage 4 lung cancer. And I have never been able to get somebody released on their own recognizance. And this woman has been released on her own recognizance like 4 times because she tells them she has stage 4 lung cancer. And then she picks up new drug charges, which if I had stage 4 lung cancer, I would probably be smoking meth too. I probably would. But this woman just keeps getting such good deals that I would not be able to get for anybody else. She was on probation and she got arrested on more drug charges. And at her probation revocation hearing, like the determination of whether or not she's going to be released to be put back on probation or if she's going to be held in jail for a number of years, probably like as long as she was going to be on probation for. I brought paperwork saying that she has stage 4 lung cancer. She can't do drug court because she takes like hydrocodone. She can't do this because she doesn't have transportation. And I was like, please, can we release this woman and put her on an ankle monitor? And it was like by a stroke of luck, her actual probation officer who doesn't like her wasn't there. It was a new judge who didn't know who she was. Like all the stars had aligned for me to get this to work. And then last week she didn't show up to her court date and she got an attachment sent out. Attachment is what we call it in Louisiana. It's a warrant because you didn't go to court. And I feel like a lot of people that I work with will be like, oh, this person, I know that he's going to get out and do this or whatever. But I feel like you just have to hope that at one point, like, it's just going to change. Something's going to click for them. They're going to get right. They're going to get themselves together. You're never going to see them again.
You mentioned drug court, but and we have drug court and can be very effective. I don't know about in Louisiana, but we have, by having drug court means you're out of custody, you come to court, start out very frequently coming to court, and the judge helps counsel you, make sure you stay on track, kind of thing. And you have counselors on the outside as well as probation monitoring you, and you go to meetings and whatever. But you have a community, and the community is all the other people in drug court with you, and you bond. I've seen this, that instead of going to a drug treatment program, a residential program, you get out of that program and you're back to your old environment, your old trouble, people. Instead, in drug court, you can have a community already there with you on the outside to help you stay clean. And they have graduations, and it's very wonderful to see. Of course, they don't all make it, but it's pretty positive, but you may not know enough about it yet for your county, your area.
Yeah, we have an attorney in my office that goes to the drug court hearing, so once my client gets like sentenced to drug court, I don't usually see them again. Unless they get in trouble and they have to have a probation revocation hearing. My only issue with drug court is just that it provides a lot of opportunities for my clients to get in trouble again. I was talking to one of my clients recently, and I was like, just so you know, if you get in trouble again, you'll be like a triple for purposes of the habitual offender bill. She's like, I'm not going to get in trouble again. And I was like, I don't want you to. I'm just telling you. Sorry. I keep trying to read and talk at the same time. So for me, I'm always going to want my clients to do an inpatient program where they're not at risk of getting arrested at all. I pretty much just view drug court as being like probation, but more difficult. And that's kind of like probation for the people who the district attorney's office doesn't want to give regular probation to. Regular probation in my division of court, at least, includes a substance abuse evaluation, random drug screens, and then complying with whatever treatment recommended by the substance abuse evaluation. So in that sense, like, the drug rehabilitative part should have been handled by regular probation as well. But I don't go to those court dates, so I don't ever see the success stories or anything. I'm a little bit pessimistic, especially when it comes to my courthouse, because they just love arresting people. And this actually made me think of something that I meant to mention earlier, which is when somebody doesn't go to court, obviously a warrant is issued, and we call those warrants attachments. And in Louisiana, you can legally be held without bond if you missed court for a violent crime. But the district attorney and the judge have misread this statute to mean that you can be held without bond for missing any court date. So I frequently have people who are in jail without bond who just sit there for months and months and months. And I mean, the point of that is like bond is meant to ensure that you're not actually fleeing the jurisdiction once you get out of jail. And then my clients who don't go to court have in that sense fled the jurisdiction. But it's just really, to me, arcane and honestly terrifying to hold all these people who haven't been convicted of a crime without bail. Just thought I would mention that as well.
I think Beth had something she's saying about the drug. Beth?
I think you're on mute, Beth. I'm sorry, we still can't hear you. I can ask you to unmute. Oh,
Oh,
there you
yeah, I think you addressed it already.
Oh, okay.
Addressed it, whatever you want.
Does anyone else have comments? And there's a lot of you that are not visible. If you want to just talk, that'd be fine.
I guess Juliet said something that I haven't acknowledged, which she said, since you deal with such intense and painful topics and work, how do you maintain that hope for humanity? Do you keep a total separation between your work and everyday life? Does it ever take a toll on you? Well, the answer to that is I've only been doing it for 6 months, so I haven't had a chance to burn out yet. I do dream about my clients. I woke up with a start because I had a dream that something happened to one of my clients' grandpas. Earlier today, I talked to this client's mom for 40 minutes. She was so sweet. I talk to people's moms all the time. I love talking to their moms. It is definitely really hard. And one of my clients who was held on no bond, like I mentioned before, for missing court, he had been in for altogether about 7 months. And the district attorney's office kept forgetting to put him on the docket, even though I reminded them many times. And so when he was finally brought to court and able to plead guilty to just get out and get probation, he cried and he hugged me, and it made me cry too. So I don't know what I'll end up doing with all that.
Well, one thing I could add is you start to redefine what win means. It can be really small things that can make your day for a change, And there were times I'd come home and stare at a wall, just go for a walk, and not just a fast walk, or go swimming and get it, just get it off my shoulders. So I think exercise helps in most jobs, but yeah, the stress is severe. So.
Yeah, there was a minute there where it was really cold outside, and then when it quit being cold, it was really rainy. And I feel like my biggest thing is just taking the dog on a walk, because then I'm moving, and then I'm with my little bestie, and he's all happy too. And I couldn't take him on a walk, and I was like, I'm gonna lose my mind. But now it's getting warmer, and the days are getting longer, so I'll be able to walk him plenty.
So I was going to say that the burnout is the exact reason I'm not in public interest. I worked for 1.5 summers doing various public interest jobs. I worked for Equality Ohio, which is a LGBTQ plus advocacy center with a free legal clinic, for Southeastern Louisiana Legal Services. And I realized that my own mental health could not take the potential for stress and burnout and taking on other people's traumatic problems, because in my job, I'm not client facing, and that's one of the best parts of it for me. I couldn't handle Kate's job, which is being people's lawyer and therapist and substitute best friend mom all at once. And I tried my hardest, but I would come out of meetings that I led, especially in my job in Ohio, where I would just sit there in silence and then maybe cry because the things that I was being told were so dramatic, because we did deal with a lot of sex offense and DV, but on the civil side, which is weird. And then like traumatic divorces and things of that nature. And I just couldn't handle it. And that's why I went into, quote unquote, bad people law.
It's not bad people law.
I've also heard the opposite, which is we need people who care about others in the type of law I'm doing, so that, you don't, pardon my French, fuck people over.
I've ever been. And I've always said that I will continue to say.
Sorry, I had a comment. Going back to the working in jail, assume the employment in jail, saying getting paid 5 cents an hour. Assuming that the people were rightfully incarcerated, and as far as I know, it costs at least 36,000 a year to keep a person in jail. Why would you think that they should be paid more if they're rightfully incarcerated? I don't even need to say quotes. I mean, if they're rightfully incarcerated and they deserve what the law appointed for them in jail time, why shouldn't they work off the public cost, in jail? Why, so the 5 cents an hour to me is just a way to track how many hours they're putting in. It's not really about the pay, but to me, it seems like it would make sense to have incarcerated people work to pay off the $36,000 a year that it costs to keep them in jail.
I guess the biggest issue I see with it is just kind of what I was trying to mention, which is that there are plenty of like basic things that they still need to buy that cost much more than a 5 cents an hour job would get them. I also just feel like the working in jail, well, first of all, honestly, we talk about jobs being outsourced, but that's like kind of a big source of where like American jobs have gone is to the jail.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The unions don't support this, allowing jails to pay so little and get all this free labor. We had a table in my office, huge table in the the library, and where we worked. And my boss used to love to come in and say, "This was built by inmates in state prison, but they're not allowed to do it anymore because of the unions." I mean, it's a difficult thing, but why not pay them, $20 an hour and take half for the state, something like that, make it, yeah, they have to pay back, but not destroy them and let them have a little money to save and spend.
My comment on this was that Louisiana has a very intense history with slavery. And this is a fact that a lot of people don't know, is that up until pretty recently, one of the coveted jobs in Louisiana prisons was that they got to work at the governor's mansion as kind of the house staff. And it was the people in prison who were essentially the best behaved. So it was essentially just legal. Prison is often compared to legalized slavery, which, that's basically what Kate said at the beginning with the 13th Amendment stuff. But especially in Louisiana, we are a very special case because of our history with slavery and because of the jobs that our prisoners were allowed to take, which is, we have prisoners who are working in essentially large food fields, but we used to also have them get sent to the governor's mansion to clean, cook, prepare food, serve at the governor's mansion and things like that. So and that's still for, the 5 an hour. So because that history is not well known, a lot of people don't understand the connection to slavery that our prisons have that is more significant than in maybe any other state. Right. Which is why the 5 cents thing is so concerning.
More than South Carolina. Yeah. And I wanted to also point out that not only the oh gosh, now that I've volunteered, I can't remember what I was going to say. It had the slavery. Okay, I'll come back to you.
Okay. Yeah, I see what you're saying, Dory. Like, if you don't have to pay for like housing and food, that's most people's main costs. I just don't. I don't know. I just think it's dishonest to have somebody work a job that you would pay a regular person at least minimum wage for and only pay them 5 cents an hour. And then also, like I was saying, the cost of stuff they have to buy. Additionally, there's kind of a problem though, because some of the jobs that they do while in jail, they wouldn't be able to do once they're not in jail because
the skill set, yeah.
I know, I think especially in California, actually, they have inmates like doing firefighting work, but I think once you're released, you can't actually be a firefighter if you have a felony.
They're changing that, but that's been an issue, yeah. Now they're looking at what kind of felony and the risk assessments, you know, to determine if they can handle it and not be a criminal again, because you can break into people's houses when there's fires going on, no one's home.
Well, that's exactly the thing. When they're in jail, they have, you know, wardens supervising what they're doing. So regardless of the work that they're doing, they got wardens overlooking, whereas in the public sector, the warden is not going to be there overlooking. So I can understand why certain jobs are not available.
But they do those jobs. They do the firefighting. It's just once they're released, they're not allowed to do the jobs legitimately as a free person.
No, that's what I said. They have a warden supervising them when they're in jail doing the firefighting. I mean, when they have when they do a firefighting job while they're in jail, there's a warden supervising the prisoners while they're doing the firefighting jobs. They're not set loose with the fire department.
Well, it's not the same as being in jail, being supervised by any means, but I think they also screen them for the types of crimes to be able to do any firefighting in custody, you know, while they're serving their sentence. It can't be murderers or child molesters. They're not going to be given those jobs to begin with. But yeah, they're probably supervised stronger.
I'm sorry, maybe I'm misunderstanding. Are they allowed to go out into, all right, so say LA County, I don't know a lot of California. Are they allowed to go do a fire thing, you know, fight a fire out in Pacific Palisades? Like where can they fight a fire if they're in jail? I guess. Is that the question?
Well, they're released on a special thing to fight fires, even though they're technically in, you know, custody. They're not in custody when there's, and we have these huge fires, so it could be anywhere. They don't say, oh, you can't fight a fire in a rich neighborhood or something. So they screen them for whether or not they think there'll be, you know, trouble out there.
I think the reason, oh, sorry.
It's just, it's not really fair. These guys are putting their lives on the line in these firefighting jobs, and they get really good at it, and then they get out on parole and they're not allowed to do those jobs. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's my biggest issue with it, is just that they have this like job training, but then once they're like, you know, in the free world, it can't be of any use.
Utilize those skills.
Yeah. Because that's a lot of why I think, you know, they have, in my state, they call it work release anyway, is to kind of like give you some job skills to kind of build up a foundation for when you get released. And if it's not, you know, to rehabilitate a person, why do any of it, is what I think.
Well, absolutely. I mean, if you're not going to rehabilitate somebody and give them skills that they can do after they are released, then what's the purpose? Right? Like that just doesn't make sense to.
So I remember
fires and then they can't fight fires ever again.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That just doesn't.
Well, but I would be on board. I would be on board with, you know, working while incarcerated, no matter what they're doing. And
Absolutely.
I mean, not no matter what they're doing. I shouldn't say it shouldn't be a humiliating job, but
no,
you know, to whatever. But definitely a job that helps pay the debt to society for funding their time in jail and the courts and the lawyer and everybody else, all that they should be working to do. And so, anyway, that's my opinion. If you're incarcerated, there should definitely be a way for them to work to pay off that debt of incarceration and all the additional costs. Now, this is not to say if somebody is unfairly incarcerated or if somebody is held without bail or anything like that, which is a whole other issue. I'm just saying this guy got convicted for a crime. He now has to pay whatever the fair time is that the judge says. At that point, he should be able to work to pay the debt to society when he's incarcerated.
Right.
Well, that comes
he should
right
be
back
able to
around.
use those skills that he learned, after he's released.
I want to raise my hand.
You can't say like.
Can anyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So it really brings it all the way back around to what I was trying to remember what I wanted to say before. Sorry about that.
Well, please cut me off.
Okay. I'm sorry. Well, the thing is, one of the things that hasn't come up is about how prison system has been commercialized in the United States. Is one of the reasons that we have such high prison populations is because by privatizing the prison systems, and particularly in Louisiana is a very big culprit of this, is that the people that are running the prisons make a ton of money, and they take that money and they funnel it in to the coffers of the politicians that can then write laws that are less forgiving, that put people in jail more easily. It happens to be very, very serious thing in Louisiana, particularly southern states, but I think California also has a very big problem with private prison systems operating that way. And I think it explains why, partially why our country imprisons more people than any other country in the world, and also the types of offenses that people can be put in jail for. So back to what Dory was saying about, well, if they were, if they're unfairly imprisoned, well, you could say that a lot of people are unfairly imprisoned because of the way the laws are written that puts them in prison. And then the other thing is that once they are in prison and they can't make money, they still have families on the outside that are being destroyed, and they can't make money, so they can't support their families. They can't have a job when they come back out. Whatever job that they had or whatever type of life that they had before they went into prison, even if it's for a relatively short amount of time, that it puts them in jeopardy for everything. Prison really ruins people's lives. So unless there's a really good reason, like we started off with talking about sex offenders, and I don't know that there's a lot of evidence to say that sex offenders can be really rehabilitated, but unless there's a really good reason to put people in prison, we shouldn't be putting as many people in prison in the first place. And then one last thing is that the reason, that in addition to all of this, everybody being put in prison for such minor things, and the laws being written in order to put people in prison, and then that labor being then turned around to be free labor or 5 cents an hour labor and that kind of thing, has been compared to slavery. And there's a really good movie. It's a couple of years old now, but it's called 13th, referring to the 13th Amendment. You did. Yeah. Well, if anybody has not seen that, it is very compelling film, and it explains a lot about what I was just trying to stumble through. So there you go. I finally remembered.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I agree with all that. What's up, Alicia?
So I admire you so much, both of you, to deal with these people and have hope and keep doing it. And it's amazing. I respect you so much, Kate. There's only one thing that I respectfully disagreed with when you were talking about sex offenses, particularly abuse to children. I worked for Georgia Council on Child Abuse for almost a year. I had to train to do it, and I was one of the people that was in the room with the kids. And I learned their stories. And what I learned during that time, this was Georgia, but no matter what, kids that were abused sexually or physically would ultimately go back to the parents. eventually they might go in a foster home, but eventually the parents always had the benefit of the doubt. And I also have some personal reasons, but I personally think a pedophile is always a pedophile. I'm sorry if I disagree with you guys. That is one thing. If somebody hurts a child, I think they should just cut their, anyway, but the point is, I just think that's one area where I disagree. I mean, for me, from what I've seen and what I've experienced, they should go to life in prison. I just wanted to give you another perspective.
Yeah, I think that your perspective is the more popular one.
I don't disagree with you. What is the age of, I don't even know what you call it anymore, consent in Louisiana?
I think it's 16 or 17.
16 or 17.
I'm not sure. But I'm pretty sure it works kind of like how I think it does in South Carolina. Like a 16-year-old cannot have sex legally with like a 30-year-old. I think they can have sex with like a 18-year-old or 19-year-old. Sorry, I'm hearing some yelling. I think that's my neighbor yelling at his dog.
Hopefully not you.
Hopefully everything's
dog
okay.
is fine.
No, my dog is very sorry. No, my dog is very much snuggled up to me right now. Okay, Lila's given us some insight. 16 to 19, 17 to 20, so it's like 3 years. Yeah, because it's 4 years is
so you have to be within a 3-year gap of whatever. But is there an age cutoff? Like if you're 14 and he's 17, or
it's not in California, it's just the crime is less serious if they're closer in age.
If they're closer in age.
And there's statutory rape, which is consensual, supposed to be consensual.
But there's no age cutoff.
You can both be minors, and the boy can be guilty of stat rape in California. And I've had clients where she's pregnant. I said, you should name your baby Evidence.
So no, I want to know like what the age is. Like there's no number really on it. Like you could be 16, you can be 7, like if you're
for what?
For which party? The younger party or the older party?
Victim or the
for the victim. I don't care about the
So in California, if you're under 13, it's a felony. It's much more serious. If you're over 6, if you're but anyone over 13, it's less of a crime. You know, it's less punishment.
Crime.
It can be a misdemeanor, maybe.
So if you're 30 years old and you get with a 14-year-old, it's a less of a crime if you're with a 13-year-old?
Yeah, could still be a felony because you're that much older. But it wouldn't be as much prison time.
But it wouldn't be much for somebody who's 20 years old who gets with a 13-year-old.
No, that'd be probably the same as 30. I mean, once you're up there and an adult, yeah.
So you guys, if a father sexually abuses his child,
in Louisiana, we call that, they don't call it incest anymore. They call it crime against nature, an aggravated crime against nature.
Interesting.
So
crime against nature.
I just want to know that is more.
Yeah. They rank them. The same as here in Louisiana as California, Mary, where 13 is kind of like the age of interest for whatever reason. I'm sure some stuff to back it up, with like some kind of science about how kids develop. It's kind of strange to me. But yeah, always if it's gonna be if it's more than 4 years difference in age, if it was a 14-year-old and an 18-year-old, or sorry, yeah, if it's a 14-year-old and a 17-year-old, that would probably be a misdemeanor carnal knowledge if it's consensual. If it was a 13-year-old and a 17-year-old, I guess that would be felony carnal knowledge. I think, I'm not certain. I'm getting a little confused about numbers. But yeah, 13 is an age of interest. If it's somebody that, if it's a blood relation, it's going to be crime against nature. Otherwise, it would be like sexual battery or molestation of a juvenile with the enhancement of victim under 13.
So what is the guy that gets the crimes against nature? What kind of sentence does he get?
Oh,
Let me look.
well, it's going to depend. Do you guys have dependency court? Do you know what that is? Juvenile dependency court, where the parents, for abuse, various type of abuse, can lose their parental rights, which is a whole nother area of law, really. They must have something like that in Louisiana.
I'm sorry, I was trying to read and listen to you. The parents can lose their
parental rights in another court proceeding, juvenile dependency, it's called in California.
Okay.
So you could, yeah, you could end up not guilty of the offense, but still have your child removed from your care under a different standard of proof. So the child is safe, even if in the criminal court they can't convict you. That can happen.
Yeah, I think that's probably in child in need of care court, which I don't do. We have an attorney who does it, even though, as you're saying, it's civil. Okay, a crime against nature in Louisiana is a relation between any brother, sister, uncle, niece, aunt, nephew, or parent, child. Wait. Oh, just doing it regularly is up to 5 years in jail, like with an adult. But if it's a child, then it's 15 to 50 years. If it's somebody under 14, it's 25 to 50 years.
Okay, that makes me feel better. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a lot, whatever it is. In sex offenses, you don't get good time or parole. You have to serve the whole thing.
By the way, to add to Alicia's point, it was an interesting documentary that I saw, but a psychiatrist was talking about our predisposition in sexual preference. And they basically stated that if somebody is predisposed to pedophilia, it's something that they can't heal. It's almost like in their wiring. And again, this is based on this expert. I haven't done my own research. So just a note on that it's something that apparently researchers think it's a predisposition and it's not something that can be treated.
Yeah, I have to think based on my own idea that is not backed up by any evidence that like it has to fall under the larger term of mental illness, because I think you would just have to be mentally ill to think that. And then they say so many more people who have been victims of this are also perpetrators.
Right.
I think also if I said that it was a mental illness in my courthouse, I would again be laughed out of the building. So, you know, hopefully there will be a day where even if it is so fruitless, that, you know, the mental health aspect of it can be attempted to be treated. You know, even if it only works 1 out of every 100 convicted pedophiles, I feel like why should anybody not want to do that? I guess for the waste of waste of resources on the people it didn't work for. But I hope that that becomes a thing, even if it really is fruitless. I feel like.
Definitely it needs specialized treatment. And there are some ways to get people to change who have those, like sociopaths can change even. It's not that they actually change, it's their mindset. They change their behavior because they want to live in this world and not go to jail. Or, you know, they get, it's kind of like, yeah, I don't know, there is a type of therapy that teaches you how to behave properly, even though you're never going to really feel that that's,
yeah, know. Mary, I'm glad you're saying that, because if, as Kate says, if we consider it in the terms of a mental illness itself is not a crime and shouldn't be punished. Right. And if, as Alicia says, a pedophile is always a pedophile, that may be true, but that individual has rights if they have not committed crimes. So as much as anybody
committing a pedophilia, but to harm a child is a crime.
To be clear, I'm not saying that. Let's just be very clear.
But what you're saying, yeah, I hear you. What you're saying is what I was saying. You may have that mindset for the rest of your life, but you're not going to engage in that.
One would believe, and I'm surely naive and optimistic in this sense, to say that if those individuals exist and are brought into this world as that, or are so traumatized by something that they cannot change, their ability to live, I still think there are rights for that. And I don't know, I don't know what the cost is. And I'm certainly not supporting the behavior. I see Alicia overreacting there. But the point is that I think that rights can't be taken from somebody before they've sort of committed a crime. And if a pedophile exists in the world and no one knows that person is, hypothetically, then that person should go about their life happily.
And we have chemical castration, and it does happen in this. If someone agrees to it, if I could be released, if only on that basis, I'll do it.
Sure, imagine. Yeah, that would be a life in a community where they could have a family, and I don't know. I mean, this is all super hypothetical. I'm just pointing out that, mental illness is not a crime. That's all.
Yeah. And actually on that, I want to bring up briefly, also, anybody tell me to shut up if I'm just saying things that are really disturbing. I don't do it on purpose. One thing that comes up sometimes with my clients is their mental illness. I have one client, he is so crazy. He's so crazy. He has a bunch of he has one misdemeanor case, and the misdemeanor attorney knows him really well. And I was like, hey, does this guy tell you he loves you on the phone, or is that just me? He's always talking about how much gold he has. He's always crying to me about the mysterious death of his girlfriend. It doesn't make any sense. But I don't even understand how what he did is a crime, but it must just be my fault. It must be a crime, and I just don't get it. He wrote himself a bad check that the bank cashed, but I don't understand why they cashed it. I don't get it. Because it's written in the person he stole money from is him. I don't get it. Anyway,
teach me that skill.
Wrote a check
myself every day.
He wrote a check from his Bank of America account to his Chase account or whatever, and it was for $35,000. He only was able to cash $5,000 of it, and he paid at least half of it back to the bank.
Chase and Bank of America. Okay, got it.
Yeah. So I'm I don't even understand how this is even his fault. Y'all should have cashed this, but whatever.
I'm hiring you, and I'm hiring you. Love it. I fucking love. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Well, honestly, Amy, I don't know if Amy's with us. I mean, she looks like she's in the group. Not Amy Harrell. I mean, she's a public defender and does a lot of
Yes.
she does a lot of local crime, but I don't know if she's on the call or not. Amy, are you there? Amy
I
Harrell.
think she's a D. I think she's a DA.
Yeah, DA. That's right.
Yeah, Amy, why don't you show yourself and talk to us?
She's probably doing the dishes right now. All right, never mind.
Yes, Amy.
Sorry, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to say I'm going to say it quietly because I'm in an airport and I feel like talking about pedophilia at an airport is a little sketch. But I just want to like clarify that like there's such a big difference between like having quote unquote pedophilia thoughts, pedophilia, I don't know if that's an adjective, which is definitely a mental illness. And that's like, you know, something that can be treatable. But I think the problem is like, as soon as somebody acts on it, like to me, they're a danger to society. And like, and that can be in any way of like, I mean, you see like, you hear people like stalking children or whatever the fuck. And I just think that like, the problem with all of this conversation is like, as much as we want to be like, yeah, prison bad or prison good or whatever, it's like the prison system is just not fit to help people like that. And even if it is a mental illness, which I agree it is, at the end of the day, like I personally like call me crazy, but I'd rather have them locked up and put behind bars and dealing with if they're acting on that, like with their shitty choices in life and knowing that they're not going to get mental health, you know, stuff. So I don't know. I just think that like there's mental illness is real and obviously like we should be treating it, but like at the end of the day, unless the prison system changes super drastically and allows for like, you know, really good therapists to go in and be like, yeah, let me work with these people and help them. I just think that it would be pretty silly of a choice to like be like, oh, maybe one time you made a silly choice of stalking a child. Now, good luck, go back into reality, go live with your kids, go live with your wife. Like, no, I think that's pretty dumb. And especially like, I think it's also, I would just also like to say that not to like gender this, but I'm going to because I'm me. I think it's interesting like hearing the different perspectives between the men in the group or male identifying people in the group and the female identifying people in the group. And that's just all I'm going to say there. I'm not going to like further that. I just think we should think of just, you know, just a little analytical comment, but I'm going to shut up for the rest of this because I'm in the airport and it's getting loud.
Hey, and Amy is saying that she can't unmute. So can you unmute her?
I'm asking her to unmute. Do you see a little thing that says you've been asked to unmute, Amy?
She wants to talk, but she can't unmute.
She can't talk.
I think she joined the meeting without the audio permit. I think so. She needs to leave the meeting and come back and enable the audio.
Okay. Maybe so.
I would just like to say that it's a sad state of affairs in my county where the jail has the most beds for mentally ill people in the whole county.
Well, can I just say one thing about that too? I mean, I remember when I was a kid, there were mental institutions and that kind of, for the most part, went away because it was cruel and horrible and all that. And now I feel like we've just put these people in the jails and I don't agree with that at all. But at the same time, I don't know what the answer is. You know, we can't have the mental institutions anymore.
Well, we could have a different version of, we don't have to have them be the horrible places they were. And when Ronald Reagan was governor here, he dismantled the whole thing in California. So people are walking around talking to themselves and they're not on their cell phone. You know, it's kind of crazy land. And there just isn't a lot of places for them. And I don't know, there are halfway houses. You can get into one from jail or prison that can help. But
I wanted to go back to my guy that had the bank fraud case. So he had just like regularly a misdemeanor case, and first of all, in Louisiana, to be found incompetent to stand trial, you like don't really understand like what guilt and innocence means. You don't understand like what defenses are. You don't understand how to help yourself, basically. So you have to be really, really mentally ill to not meet that criteria. And in misdemeanor cases, if you're not competent to stand trial, they'll just do like outpatient community rehabilitation. But if you're found incompetent in a felony case, they will send you to a facility. It's called Jackson, and they'll keep you there until they can rehabilitate you. So if they can't rehabilitate you, you will stay there for the rest of your life. So anyway, this guy was evaluated when he had just a misdemeanor because they're like, cool, you know, we'll just get you community treatment. And then he picked up a felony charge. And now I'm like, can y'all make this a misdemeanor, please? Like, I don't want him going there. He's like, I think he's 66, so he's like an old, oh, okay, sorry. He's like an older man. For somebody that I'm interacting with, if they're in their 60s, they're like very old because for the most part, they haven't been taking very good care of themselves. He really hadn't been in trouble that much until recently, which I'm sure if you were to ask like my DA, he would say, oh, it's because this guy decided to break bad. But obviously my take on it is he's having like a mental health episode. But that is what will happen if you are very, very mentally ill in Louisiana. And if somebody is not looking at a very serious sentence, like 20 years, I would not raise competency, even if they were incompetent, because they might go to Jackson for forever, which is a really, really sad state.
Yeah.
I guess Amy didn't come back.
What's up?
I just said Amy didn't figure it out.
Amy?
Oh.
Okay. I was trying to ask her to unmute, but I don't know if she's still there.
I think you got the wrong Amy because I got the request to unmute, but I'm not the DA.
It's Amy Herrick.
I realized that I also sent it to her.
She said it's for the best that she doesn't comment.
Hey, we have something.
Oh yeah, what's going on with y'all?
Just wanted to round it up with a anecdote that my sister told me when she first started being public defender for juveniles many years ago, many decades ago. She said that the kid was stopped, maybe he stole a car or something, going to Nevada from California with the little girl, and the kid was maybe 14 or 15 and the girl was 11. And so they were questioning him, and they said to him, kind of trying to explain to him, they said, you know, this girl was only 11. And his response was, the bitch said she was 12.
So, you remember that, I don't.
Hi, this is Amy Harrell.
Hello.
Yes, I got the unmute, and I think anyway, I'm not sure. I think it might have been on my end, but every time I'd click the unmute, nothing would change. So I apologize. But yes, I am here. I found everything that everyone has said valid and different point of views, and it's always good to hear how different states and different court systems operate. But if there's anything in particular you'd like me to comment on, I'm happy to.
Yeah, it was the thing about the check that the guy wrote himself for $35,000.
Yeah, that's bank fraud. That's a 0 to 5 year felony. It's called in the finance world called kiting. And what he did, if he had not gotten the 5,000, but I see the public defender's point of view that the bank's stupid. But just because a victim is stupid, you can't say the defendant didn't commit a crime. And he got 5,000, and paying 2,500 back, that doesn't clear the fact that he committed the bank fraud, or that there was no, the bank's out 2,500. You can't do that. He knew what he was doing. He's kind of clever to be able to do that.
I don't understand how that works. How did the bank give you money that you don't have? I don't get it.
No, he presented a check to one bank, and that bank's whatever their personal policy or whatever their checks and balances or whatever their system was to clear what he came in with a check, and they gave him the money without, let's say, a 10-day waiting period. I know in my banks here in South Carolina, when I'm trying to deposit a large amount of money, they'll take my money right away. And if I'm putting it, let's say, in a money market account, they'll say, okay, it'll start earning interest today, but you can't withdraw it for 10 days or something, because they make sure it clears because they've been burned enough. But if the bank's policy, if that's not their policy and they turn around and hand me the money, and I had the criminal mens rea on my end that I knew I didn't have, in your guy's case, he knew he didn't have $35,000 when he did that. And if he didn't know that, then that gets back to the mental evaluation point of whether he was competent enough to know what he was doing or not, so it gets back to, or either the criminal responsibility maybe. But yeah, it's definitely a crime. I have no compulsion that it's not a crime. It's just, you have to build your case on whether he was criminally responsible to know what he was doing was a crime. Or in your case, if he's already been found not competent for misdemeanors, and again, your state must be different from our state, because when you're found not competent, you're pretty much not competent, but every time you commit a crime, you get another evaluation, because mental illness waxes and wanes and is fluid, and you can be competent one moment and not competent another. And for those of you that aren't in the criminal or the court system, competency doesn't mean competent to be a human being. Competent means what the public defender was explaining about, if you understand the role of your attorney, if you understand the role of the prosecutor, if you understand the system. It has nothing to do with how bright or not bright or clever you are. So even here, when we send someone off to get restored, they're not sending them to cure their mental illness. They're sending them to restore them to understand the court process. And then back to what Aaron was saying, nowhere in my knowledge is it illegal to be mentally ill. I think no one takes issue with that. However, committing crimes is illegal, and you can have bipolar, but that doesn't excuse you from committing crimes if you were competent to know that you're committing a crime. So, and I don't think anybody gets labeled a pedophile and gets put into a jail system. I think that would come after you've committed and been convicted, once you've committed an act, and then there's evidence against you. So I don't think that people are just labeled for their predispositions. I think they only pick up those, label's not the right word, but they fall into that category once they've proven or been found guilty in a court, or by a judge. And many of the things that you're saying about bail and people being held without bail and all that, there's so many, everything that you've said, I think everybody across the country agrees with, disagrees with, or agrees the systems are broken, trying to fix the systems. Lots of places are doing many different things. I read one of the comments that about the drug courts, and it all depends on how your drug court is done. There's a model out there that actually started in California. It's now called the National Adult Drug Court Programs, and it also has tracks for veterans and tracks for mentally ill. And because it's been studied and been out there for 20 years. In fact, some of the things that they taught the courts to do in the beginning, they now almost say the reverse. But it's studied and there's evidence base behind it. So the drug courts across the nation that stick to that model at least have some evidence base behind it. Now, just like you can go to the grocery store and, one day eggs are very healthy for you and one day eggs are terrible for you. I guess you can always continue to study things and come out with reasons why something works or something doesn't work. Everything that we've been saying about, what do you do with these people that are either sex offenders or drug addicts? What is the answer? Well, the answer, it may not be incarceration, but the answer is also not continue to let them roam the community and continue to steal from others or commit their crimes. I'm not even trying to touch on whether drug use is legal or illegal or drug possession is legal or illegal. I'm talking about when a person is breaking into jewelry stores and stealing jewelry to support their drug habit. They're committing crimes on the community. So it's got to be addressed. And I don't know what the answer is. And here in South Carolina, like you said, in Louisiana, you had the place called Jackson. We have had facilities where people could go. We've lost the funding for those. There's simply no funding. It's not just an answer of nurses being trained. It has to do with funding. And yes, it gets back to legislatures and governments and what they say you can do and what you can't do. And so here, so many of our people with mental issues, whether they are in the criminal system or just the civil system, there's really nowhere for them to go. And when they're brought to the court and the court orders them to outpatient treatment and they don't go and they're not in the criminal system, I mean, there's nothing that makes them go, because as Aaron said, it's not illegal to be mentally ill. And if you want to be mentally ill, you can. And then the criminal system just gets involved once they start committing crimes. And then you do have to look at protecting society, not just treatment to the person or not just rehabilitation. And there may be some kind of punishment aspect. We had a long time ago when I first started, we had something called the Restitution Center. And I think everybody loved it. It was run through our probation. It was a place where if you got a jail sentence, you could, and this would not be for violent offenders, but if you got a jail sentence, you would stay at the Restitution Center. It was a different building than the actual jail. And you would sleep there every night. But every day you'd get up and you'd go to your job and you'd work. And then you come back and you sleep there at night. And they would take so much of your pay. I think you were allowed a certain percent of your own pay, but the rest of the pay literally went to pay for, Dory, not for your housing and not for the cost back to the taxpayers, but to the victims of straight restitution. In the case of the bank fraud, that gentleman could stay at the restitution center if he was able to work and go out every day and work and come back until he had paid the $2,500 off. But all of his money would not go to restitution. He'd still be able to keep a certain percentage. That was run through our probation. Again, funding ran out. I don't know what closed. Everybody, me, the judge, the defendants, the public defenders, everybody's real sad when it closed because we all thought it was great. It was such a good solution.
Fabulous. I'm sorry, Amy. I didn't mean to cut you off, but that sounds like a fabulous program. Right.
And then yes, and then getting back to like the firefighters and stuff like that. I don't know. We have different programs. I mean, I think all across the country people are trying different programs. We do have something here called Turn 90. And it's not it's sort of like you're saying your people go out and do the firefighters, except for in Turn 90, whatever skills that they're learning, it's kind of a pre-release. And I think people, when they're getting ready to be released, they can start doing it and they actually learn skills, from social skills to work skill, whatever, printing shirts, making like things that when they get out, they can actually have a job and make an income. So, there are programs like that. We do have something called SC Strong, South Carolina Strong, that started in New York, or maybe it started in Baltimore. But in my opinion, when I go there, it's almost like a cult or something. I mean, people, the defendants agree to live there and they agree to abide by all the rules. And for the people who it works for them, that's the solution for them. They go there, they can't have any contact with their family, friends, girlfriend, wife, children for like a solid year. while they're living there and learning to work and learning, but while they're rehabbing and getting treatment and things. Oh, but what I want to get back to on the drug courts and all, here in Charleston, we do have professionals through what we call the Charleston Center. The Charleston Center is where anybody in Charleston that has a drug issue can go to the Charleston Center. Those are our counselors for our drug court. Our Department of Mental Health are the counselors for our mental health court. Either one of those, or actually the VA system provides the treatment and the counseling for our VA court. So it's not, ours are as good as the horse drinking the water. If the person wants help, we're throwing it at them. We're making it available. We try to tailor it to the individual for what works for them while supervision is in place and while the community's kept safe. But, if people don't want to accept the help or aren't accepting the help, then they're going to continue to use and continue to break laws. And that's on them. I mean, I don't, mental illness and drug addiction are diseases, but once you start breaking laws, then unfortunately, you are in the system. Then you do have to be accountable for the consequences of your actions. Have I said enough now? Do y'all want me to mute myself now?
That was good. No.
I have a bit of just a thought, and I think the thing that I struggle with like a lot of this conversation, and like obviously I have no participation in the legal system, don't want to have any participation in the legal system, frankly. Mad respect to those of you that do what you do. I just think, especially like when we think about violence, and like I've taken a lot of classes in the anthropology department that explore a lot of these issues and the complexity of these issues. And I think like, yes, we can provide this quote unquote level of care and aftercare, whatever the heck you want to call it, like with people who are in prison or people who have committed crimes. But I think we forget like just the complexity of the situations that usually lead up to these people committing crimes. And the reason behind the crime is usually a like sense of desperation. I mean, regardless of like pedophilia, but when we're talking about like these petty crimes or like the money stuff, and like so much of it is just like people growing up in really shitty places. And I mean, again, I'm going to always go for that documentary, the 13th. Like if any of you haven't seen it, like that's your homework, go watch it. Trust me. I had to watch it for a class and I watched it twice. It's that good. And it teaches you just like a lot about the reality of the prison system and why like these quote unquote solutions. And like, I've been in a mental hospital, and did it help me? No. Did it make it worse? Yes. And I think like just the reality is, even when we try to come up with these systems, like the funding, the issues, like I just think we forget how complex mental illness and how complex just situational things that happen to an individual, because like, yes, obviously each individual is different and we want to think, but we don't have the capacity to be like, oh, we're going to focus on each individual person. We want to fix the problem as a whole. But like when our prison system is so unjust and so problematic and like very racially, I know people are going to have disagreements with this, but like factually, like statistically, again, I could back this up if I cared enough to go look it up. I don't, because I just don't care to talk to ignorant people like that. But I just think there's so much more complexity to the problems of the prison system, and like even these quote unquote solutions, like even like when you were saying like they can't access communication with their loved ones, like that's fucked. Like part of the best way to rehabilitate a person is to have them communicate with the people they love. And like that's something like in the mental illness institute you're taught, like the only way you can be released is if you have a community to go back to that is going to help you. So that's just my little hot take, I guess.
That seems to be changing in terms of phone calls, because the families would get the collect call bills, and they're way higher than normal collect call bills. So I think that's changing in most states. They're doing something about that to make it more that you can talk to your family. I want to mention victim impact, and I forget what it's called, but when a victim of a crime wants to engage with the person who committed the crime, and they can get together and hear from that person what they did to them, it can be very powerful. It's too bad there's not more of that, as a tool for letting people see the impact of their criminality.
We do have a victim impact program like that here. And I think that it is very impactful on everyone. It's very impactful on the defendants. I mean, they say, hey, I had no idea that what I did had these ramifications or made you feel this way, or, you know, had these consequences to others, because the defendant's just thinking of themselves at the time they're doing the crime. And it is very impactful. And I think those are great programs as well.
Yeah, we had one with juvenile defendants that was effective, you know. They're like, gosh, I had no idea my graffiti or whatever had this kind of effect on you. Yeah.
This is not super related, but the guy that cried in court, part of the reason his plea had been pushed back so far is because the DA's office kept not notifying the victim, and technically they have to let like a victim know. It was a domestic abuse case. Honestly, I don't understand how this case even happened. Like, the cop at the scene said that they were both the primary aggressor. So he got a felony because she's pregnant, and that makes it a felony in Louisiana. And she got a misdemeanor summons because obviously he's not pregnant. So they both got charged with fighting each other. Anyway, but the DA's office was trying to not let him plead because they hadn't notified the victim. And I got really angry with the DA. I was so angry I was like shaking, because I see where they're coming from, and actually, even if they didn't care about the victim personally, it is the law, but they never notified her, and I had no reason to believe they were going to. In fact, the only person who talked to her was me.
Notified her about what?
About the court date, so that she could come and make a victim impact statement if she wanted to.
Oh, they can drag it out for the person in custody because they haven't notified them, but that's on them that they didn't notify her.
I personally agree. But yeah, he was in there for a long time, and they hadn't talked to her. There's another thing happening right now with we need to get some like records pertaining to like a child, and the DA hasn't notified the victim, and it's dragging things out, and that guy is also incarcerated. So just kind of interesting comments I wanted to make. I feel like there is a push for, you know, prosecution to be more victim centered, and I definitely think that it should be. I'm not seeing that reflected in my courthouse at the very least. Just kind of as an aside, I think the restitution thing y'all were talking about is really interesting because, I mean, we don't have anything like that. And definitely, if somebody can't afford to pay restitution, it's not really helpful to the victim for somebody to go on probation or serve a jail sentence. That doesn't do them any good. But that's what happens a lot, you know, if somebody's indigent, which I feel like most people are if they're stealing to begin with.
On the point about victims, you know, traditionally victims were left out of the system because, frankly, in a criminal case, you've got the state versus the defendant. So a victim is simply a witness that is only needed if you need their testimony. So victims traditionally or historically had no real voice. And then that's when some laws come around, like you say, in Louisiana, it's the law, and in South Carolina, it's the law too. You have to, the Victim Bill of Rights came along. So we actually have victim advocates employed in our, well, they're in our office, but they're the advocates for the victims. But we have them at the police stations. Maybe you do as well. Each level, each court has them, each police law enforcement unit has them, and then the solicitor's office, that's what we call ourselves in South Carolina, solicitors, we have them. And they, you know, so we get in a lot of trouble. I mean, we have a duty to notify victims of hearings or to, we've just got a notice duty. They may not like what we say, they may not like what we offer, but we don't represent the victims. But what you're saying about the notice, ours, I think probably every single courthouse, if you went across America, every single courthouse, somebody's going to have a complaint about something that somebody's doing, and we've got it all. We can't go forward with the case because the defense attorney will walk in and say, well, I forgot to tell my client to be here, and then the case gets continued, stuff like that. So I mean, it's on both sides, it's all the way around. But here, if someone were doing something that you thought was intentionally delayed, I guess you do a rule to show cause or do a motion hearing in front of the chief admin judge and have the judge figure out. But all that, I hear what you're saying, all that takes time. Even if somebody, you want to make a motion perhaps to reduce their bond, that might not get set for about 6 months, because that's how backed up our system is. And we got backed up really bad during COVID, and we've been trying to dig out ever since. And thank God, I had a caseload of about 700, and now it's down to 400. And that's how much we've been moving and trying to get something manageable. But it's terrible when somebody's in jail because somebody hasn't given notice. But it is the law. You got to give them notice. So, and here we've switched the duties of who calls cases, who's in charge of the docket, who gives the notice. That's flipped in South Carolina over the last few years, from the solicitor's offices to the court system. And then they kind of found out that the judges were calling the docket. And then they kind of found out maybe that's not the best system, because the judges have no idea to know what cases are ready or what cases might have what problems. And then you spend your entire payday sitting in a courtroom explaining every single case and every single detail of every single case you have to a judge, so a judge can decide what case is ready, when we already know what's ready or not ready. So, I think everybody is trying to work on it. And then I think earlier there was a comment about America having more people in jail. Well, let me tell you, I don't know. I've never been in jail in another country, but it might be okay to be in jail in America versus some other places. And there might be reasons why people aren't in jail in the other places, because maybe their laws are so harsh. I don't know. A friend of mine was trying to tell me, like you're saying, this 13, I'm going to put that down and watch that. I think there's a show called Locked Up Abroad. And
I watch it.
Yeah. So I haven't
seen
I haven't seen it, but they were telling me how, the systems are and the jails are in other countries. But I think we have a much more forgiving system than many countries. But as the speaker was saying, there are certain states where it may be more of a valid argument about whether a person feels like it's an institution of slavery or not. And of course, that's a whole Pandora's box to open and look at. But I mean, I think there's some validity to the person's perspective. And if they're in one of those states where, you have a lot of African Americans and where slavery was abundant, then I think there's some validity to those perspectives. So it's just interesting. But I really think everybody's trying to do their best. But I mean, you can't just not have laws abided by, because that's called chaos, and that's not a civilized society. So you've got to have some kind of forum. And locking people up, you're talking about who gets their restitution back. Well, it's not always about somebody getting paid back, whether they're in jail or, I mean, part of it is trying to teach society you can't go around doing these things. You can't go around stealing. I mean, that's part of it. I'm not the judge, so thank goodness I don't have to make those decisions on how long somebody does have to stay in. And when you say your laws carry 0 to 10 years, we have many things that carry 0 to 10 years. And it's very, very rare that they get on the 10-year scale of that. They're usually getting time served. So, there's a lot of discretion case by case that the judge hears, mitigation, and then the person's past record and the victim impact and all that. So I think we have a pretty good system. And I'm frankly in a county where there's not a lot of justice delved out. We are here in Charleston, probably the most liberal county in the state of South Carolina. And people get time served for things here in Charleston that they get 5 years for a couple counties up the road. So, I kind of think we're a little too liberal down here, but that's, I've been a prosecutor for 24 years, so that's my perspective.
If I can interject, I appreciate what you said, Amy, and I appreciate everyone who's talked tonight. As the hostess, I just wanted to point out that we've gone 30 minutes over. And since this is on, thanks to Juliet, it's online. So I just want to kind of say goodnight, but you guys can continue talking. But I also, before we say goodnight, thank you, Kate. And Kate, do you have any last words before we sort of officially close this?
Oh, Kate, you're muted. Not really. I appreciate everybody coming and listening to me ramble. Sorry for any moods I may have dampened. But yeah, I appreciate talking with you all a lot.
I just left a note from Anatole France, in the 1800s, wrote, "The law in its majestic equality forbids the rich as well as the poor to sleep under bridges, to beg in the streets, or to steal bread." So I think that's for you, Kate.
I appreciate it.
And if you'd like to join the future salons, just send me your email address. I'll put you on it. Does anyone else have anything to say before we close for the evening?
Just thank you very much, Kate, for hosting.
Yes, thank you.
It's a very difficult subject and obviously very deep in many ways. So we appreciate, everything you brought to the table.
Absolutely. Kate, you're awesome.
Y'all are awesome.
Well, good night, you guys. Thank you so much. If anyone wants to be in charge, let me know.
Good night.
Good night. Have a good night. Thanks.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.